Okay, we're going to start talking about the direct fire action now. Now, direct fire is when you are using your AP or your HE stats to directly attack an enemy unit. To conduct an attack like that, you're going to have to meet a few requirements. First off, you can't be disrupted or ops complete, obviously, to conduct a direct fire attack. Also, you have to have the right type of weapon to conduct the attack. The enemy unit must be in range, and you must have line of sight to conduct the attack as well. Got a few quick examples set up along here, saying our T-80 wanting to conduct attacks over here against these enemy units. And these represent all the different types of ground units that you could potentially have to attack. We have a tank, which represents the heavy armor attack, which you can tell again because it's a vehicle. It has a picture of a vehicle, and in the bottom left, you see its armor stat. Then you have light armored units like this troop carrier, which you can tell by its armor stat as well. And then you have different types of soft targets here, like a vehicle soft target, which you can tell because it will have a vehicle picture. And then all the others, the troop types, will have a NATO symbol. And again, for the armor value, you'll see an S for soft. When it comes to what type of attack you will use against these different types of targets, a AP attack, which again, looking on our T-80 is going to be the upper left set of numbers on the counter. They can be used to attack any type of vehicle or aircraft, but nothing else. When it comes to your HE, which again is in the upper right of the counter, that can be used against light armored vehicles or soft targets or aircraft. There are a few rare instances where you can use it against heavy armor, but that's going to be module specific, so we're going to ignore it for generalities. If a unit doesn't have the right type of attack, whether AP or HE, to attack its intended target, then it cannot conduct an attack. When it comes to the range, remember the range is the first number listed down. So for the T-80, its range for its AP would be 12, and for its HE, it would be 6. The enemy unit needs to be within that range, and there's different modifiers depending on if it's point blank, which is half the listed range, effective, which is above half up to the printed range listed down, or long range, which is up to double the listed, the printed range. And we'll get into what those modifiers are a little bit later on. So when it comes to line of sight, there are so many different circumstances that can pop up depending on where your units are located, what type of terrain that you're fighting on, that I can't give you an example for every different one that you're going to see, but we're going to go over a few generalities that you'll see in some of your games. Make sure you look at your terrain effects chart. It will list down the different types of terrain, whether they obstruct or block line of sight. Obviously, if it's a blocking piece of terrain, like these woods here or city terrain, if the line of sight is traced through a hex like that, it's going to be blocked and the unit will not be able to perform an attack. When it comes to terrain that's listed down as obstructing, like for example this cultivated terrain here or wrecks, you can trace line of sight through a single hex that obstructs and still have line of sight, but you can't trace line of sight through two obstructing hexes. At that point, it's going to be considered blocked. So if our T-80 here is tracing a line of sight to the Abrams, right now it'd be clear if we took one of the wrecks and placed it in the way, it would still be able to conduct that attack because there would be only one obstruction between the T-80 and the Abrams. But if there was another wreck in the way, this would be two pieces of obstructing terrain and it would block the line of sight. Also, when it comes to line of sight, you're going to have different elevations come into it. I definitely recommend you look in your rulebook and look at all the different illustrations that will give you good examples of the different types of effects from elevation. But just as a few different examples, we have our hills located here. Again, you can tell by the curvy line at the edge signifying this is a hill. If we have units that are on the hills, they can trace line of sight over what would normally be considered blocking terrain and be able to conduct attacks to each other. But if you have one unit on a hill and the other is down, located on the ground level, At that point, it's not going to be able to trace a line of sight because there is a blind spot created by blocking terrain up to a certain distance, depending on the distance between the firing unit and the blocking terrain. Again, there's good examples in your rulebook for how far that blind spot will extend depending on the height of the unit and its distance to the blocking terrain. One last quick thing to keep in mind, some units are going to have a minimum range requirement. They're going to be signified by the black triangle on the left side of the counter. This means that that unit can't perform an attack if the enemy is 1 or 2 hexes away. It needs to be at least 3 hexes away for it to perform a direct action attack.